Hey everybody, happy Monday night, happy Memorial Day. This is Across the Pitch. I am Mike Barrera. I have my two buddies, my two pals next to me, Jose Nunez and Dave Miller. Dave, how you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good. I mean, it's a bank holiday over here as well. I think it's you guys have got it's a holiday day for you guys as well. So I mean,
That's right.
we're all off. We had a day off, and we're coming to come into the show. Well, none to work. So I mean, I'm looking forward to discussing some union. It's been another good weekend, shall I say?
Yes, another good weekend with some added bonus of news we've heard today and the rumors, but we'll get to that in a second. Jose, how you doing today?
I'm doing well considering that you all can trust me with your trust fund, your IRA, your investments, whatever you want, because apparently I seem to hit most of my things, most of my bets here. And I'm referring to the boys, the bet, what is it?
Bet the
What-
boys in blue.
Bet the boys on blue. See, I was confused on the order there for a second, but we'll talk about that later, I'm sure. But feeling good. I mean, to win 3-1 away from home in a hostile city in a small box field, I think is great.
I thought it was a great performance. We had, if you know, if, for those of you who missed the Bet the Boys in Blue portion of last week's episode, Jose nailed it across the board. He said 3-1 score. He said a Gazdag PK, and then he had a Carranza open play. So if only Magno and Lowe pulled through for you, Jose, to finish all four of those goals, that would have been just the lottery ticket of all
See,
lottery
that's the
tickets.
thing. You just got to go with anytime scorers with me.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they once I saw the Quran's open play goal, it's like, well, maybe, just maybe, we have some hope
Yeah,
here. But I mean, for those who missed the match on Saturday, of course, the Union went to City Field up in Queens and took down NYCFC 3-1. Dave, I know you were on the match report, so what were your thoughts on the match?
I think I'll say the interesting point, well, most interesting stat coming into the game is the fact that NYCFC was unbeaten at home this year, whether it be Yankee Stadium or City Field. So Union had a bit of an up battle task coming into the uphill task coming into the game, and I mean, NYCFC for as often as they've looked at points this year, they did look quite strong. I thought in the opening half an hour, 40 minutes, caused Union problems. Gabriel Prayer was fantastic, really. I mean, caused us plenty of problems. Could have easily scored a hat trick. Um, Obviously, the first goal, I think, uh, obviously, Jose saw my messages in the group chat. The first goal was Jose Martinez's fault. I think it, again, it's just one of those instances where he's trying to be too silly and clever with the ball in a dangerous position, 25 yards from the goal, and really just keep it simple, move the ball forward. Why are you trying to do silly flicks and like ball rolls and things such as that? Obviously, loses the ball. Somewhat just loses the ball under his own feet. Union are out of position. There's gaps to take advantage of. And then obviously a good bit of play from Rodriguez into the Desiree. Quick thinking to play it wide to Pereira, who had about acres of space, and a good finish. And of course, if Pereira hadn't scored, NYCFC would have got a penalty anyway because Lowe completely wiped out. I think it was a Desma. So again, a good goal to straight the ball into the bottom corner. A very poor goal to concede.
Yeah.
But again, I think that was one of the common themes in that first half was how open the Union were defensively. Um, there was so much room in behind, like in the gaps with the centre halves. Because I mean, the fullbacks, the wing backs, are clearly been told to push hard at the pitch, and when the Union were getting caught on carry, which was happening quite a bit, the gaps were coming in behind, and it happened very often
Yep.
that Wagner being so hard the pitch, there was so much room down the left hand side defensively, and it was only a matter of time before they were going to get caught out when they had.
Jose, how about yourself? What did you think? I mean, I feel like the Jose Martinez blunder that Dave was alluding to just now in that first goal was very frustrating. We turned it around rather so quickly. What was your thoughts on the response to how the Union faced that adversity?
I laugh because I actually missed the response. Both of the goals came in, such a quick clip. I was upstairs with my 3-year-old putting him to bed, and I went upstairs kind of huffing and puffing, thinking, "Shit, here we go, 1-0 loss at New York." In a baseball field, whatever. Let's chalk it up to the field, and Jim had some words too about the field in the post match press conference, which we can talk about later. But um, in the what was it, like 10 minutes I was upstairs and I came down at halftime with like, like a couple of minutes before it kicked off again. My wife is like, "You missed it." I was like, "Oh yeah, I probably missed one, right?" And it's like, "No, you missed two." I was like, "What?" Wow. This is not the Union I remember. So, it almost feels contractual, right? To see Jose Martinez, and maybe that's a good term to use considering the rumors, but that he's going to have one of these blunders either per match or every other match that just cost the Union something of consequence, right? A goal in this instance, never mind a hospital ball, an injury to somebody else, etc. It almost seems like it's just pre-planned by Jose to always have one of these like mental breakdowns where he does something completely silly. But I gotta give it to the Union, our beloved Union, just fighting back, clawing back, and in the post-match press conference, Jim being very open to the team and or to the press and saying, my talk going into half remained the same regardless of the scoreline. I was just maybe more open to the team and saying, "Do you guys want to press? Because it seems like if
Yeah.
we can just take a hold of this." And obviously, the second half was a completely different story compared to the first, I should say. So, all in all, I think a great performance. Shout out to all the fans that traveled. It sounded like a good crowd. So, shout out to everybody who was
You,
there.
you saw they got like field seats. They were
Yeah,
very
unbelievable.
close.
Unbelievable. I don't think any of those fans would find themselves ever at Citi Field again, let alone
Yeah.
in seats of that caliber.
Yeah, I didn't expect it. I think Kai went for a corner kick. I was like, wait a minute, the Union fans are right on the edge of the corner
Yeah.
line, which I thought was bizarre. Usually you're up, miles high in any sort of stadium.
I
So
mean,
it
our
was,
stadium, think about our stadium, right? How far up those 4 or 5 rows are.
yeah, no, I was very shocked, especially when I think of Red Bull Arena. Typically, we're on that second level up at the top, and then to see us, right off the first base line, it was just very odd. But
That
uh,
sentence
ho-
alone, Mike, is so depressing.
what was that?
Right up
Right,
first
the first.
baseline. That sentence alone is so depressing about the state of that franchise right now, and obviously years in the making now for this new stadium that just got unveiled. But Jim said it nice and loud at the press conference. I think was it Matt DeGeorge, or I forget who asked
Yeah.
the question during the presser about what does it mean to give that team their first loss in Citi Field, and Jim was very open to say it means absolutely nothing because
Right.
these fans deserve so much better.
And that's fair. So I was at Zed's, and Valerie said 3 busloads of fans. So it was a really great
Wow.
outing. So thanks, Valerie, for sending that number over. So I was at Zed's watching the game, and of course you'll have the diehards in there, but you'll have people trickle in, you know, stopping like, oh, they're playing a game. Well, why are they playing at City Field? Why are they at a baseball diamond?
Yeah.
And it is the most innocent question, and yet the most like reasonable question. Like, wait a minute, why are they playing? Like, he's like, oh yeah, I can see the pitcher's mound or whatever they were talking about.
And
So
embarrassing, really, right, Dave? I mean, think about it. When you see this as an international person, and you're maybe telling your friends to follow MLS for whatever reason, whether it's to watch or maybe just now that the Premier League and the Championship and all these other leagues are done, you go and show this game, and I'm sure your friends are like, "What the hell's going on? There's no proper pitch here. What is this makeshift stuff?"
yeah,
I
go
was
ahead,
gonna
Dave.
say, well, like I think I said to you in the chat, I was like, teams feel like they can get away with this because there is no consequence if they don't have their own stadium, if they can play whatever they
Right.
want. Which is why I think, again, I know. I mean, at the moment there isn't really sort of a setup in place for relegation and promotion to sort of be, somewhat like to be able to actually be used. But I feel like it's something that would perhaps speed up these processes. Teams not taking the mick. NYCFC, I think, have pretty much played at Yankee Field or in a baseball stadium in their entire existence. It's sort of like in the old Football League days, if your ground wasn't up to standards, you wouldn't get promoted. You couldn't get, if you're like the Conference National League or Wrexham were in your ground wasn't up to standards, you couldn't get promoted. You had to stay where you were until your ground was sorted. And that's where this is where, having other relegation promotion, not having any consequences for your failures does come into play. Because again, we see teams this year, like obviously Montreal have really kicked on. But I think if you're a Montreal fan at the start of the season, you lose your manager and you just completely, you completely just wipe away your squad, and then you're a fan coming in saying, yeah, you're looking at going, so we're just going to tank and throw away a 38 game season or whatever we've got, or 34 game season, just to, not trying it. And that is where, if there were consequences for your actions, teams would try, things would be more, games would be more competitive and more interesting later you go in the season, as opposed to, you get to like the final 5 games and a team that's 14th and they've got nothing to play for gets 3,000 fans. It's just, something that perhaps the American game could look into. You see Pittsburgh have gone on an incredible run this year in the US Open Cup, and they've knocked out multiple MLS teams. There are obviously teams that can compete if they've got the money and the facilities there. And of course, they've got a proper stadium. They've got a stadium, that's an actual football stadium. Why can't they? Put in a bid to be allowed into the MLS? It's sort of, I think that's something obviously perhaps a much deeper discussion. But I feel like if as a franchise where you feel like you can get away,
you can get away with mediocrity.
You can get away with these sort of things. There's no consequences for your actions. So.
As Derek points out, and Derek, by the way, you post some great stuff on the Facebook page. I've been following it for years. He says there are consequences for skippers and players. And just, Dave, this is kind of a different segment entirely with the relegation and the, holding teams accountable. Look at the Flyers. The Philadelphia Flyers are the definition of embarrassing right now in the NHL. There's no consequence, though, for them for being this awful. All they've been doing to kind of rectify their issues have been getting gritty or having like different events at the games that distract from what's actually happened on the ice. So I don't disagree with you, Dave. It's nice that finally New York City is finally coming around, but it's not like it was a team, let's say like the Oakland Athletics in baseball, right? Where it wasn't a big market team. This is New York City. You expect New York City to spend New York City money from the jump and have a field, have it all. No, they didn't. They just waited. What? How long have they been in the league now? For
10 years and change. Almost 10. I don't know, 10 years, I think. But Mike,
it's been a while. Yeah.
The other thing to remember: this is a team with sovereign wealth behind us, and I say this as someone who has liked the Citigroup teams for a little while now.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I stayed true to my Philadelphia Union, but I was there for the cash injection that Manchester City got from a sovereign state. So I totally get it. I know the benefits of it and obviously some of the negative that comes with it. But let's not forget, this is a team that has legitimately sovereign wealth and should have had this figured out from the get-go. But Don Garver and company just let it slide. And, it's neither here or there. And it is what it is, but I'm just so happy for that franchise and the fans, which I'm sure there are many in a city that's probably hungry for soccer, professional soccer to be at. Sure. That now that, within the next couple of years, hopefully not too many years away, that we're able to go to an actual soccer facility to enjoy rather than having first base seats to watch the Philadelphia Union against New York City FC.
Now, I just wonder, the big question is that once they do build that soccer stadium, are they going to enlarge their championship banner into a regular size banner? Or is it still going to be?
They just got to go like this.
It's still going to be this little paper dude wipe kind of thing that they have posted up there. Because that's the thing. They have it up in Yankee Stadium. They're not going to have this giant banner, covering the accolades of Babe Ruth and company out there.
To be fair, they had something larger. I noticed it. If you rewind and watch the game again, they did have a larger banner for Citi Field. So they upgraded something. It's not as comical as it was when it was first revealed, but nonetheless, what a comical circumstance that was and result.
And we've kind of segued a bit off but it's a good conversation to have, Dave. I think you see with the Open Cup now being what it is and seeing these quote unquote minor league teams excelling. At what point does soccer in America eventually get to that point? But again, I think we're far away from that. But Jose, you had mentioned the contractual negotiations with Jose Martinez. For those of you who didn't see the news out earlier today from Tom Bogert, Jose Martinez looks like he will be signing an extension with the Philadelphia Union. I don't believe we know the details of it yet. I believe everything is still kind of in the works. It's just now more public. Dave, Jose Martinez sticking around for another X amount of years. What are your thoughts as soon as you saw that news break?
Obviously, I think it was good. Of course, considering the start of the season where, we were getting, cryptic Jose Martinez Instagram stories and stories of his unhappiness and not being able to go to Turkey. I think it's great news to see another integral piece stay. I think 'cause we were all preparing for so long to see Jose go. Now I think it's quite good. It's quite big. Especially I think with him. I'd like to hope that if the Union might end up sticking with this 5-3-2, 5-2-3 or 5-2-1-2 formation, that Jose sticks in this new role he has, which he clearly has the more attacking freedom to push on and be more aggressive when going forward, as opposed to going on a little mazy run, passing the ball and running back and making sure he's covering the six. And it looks like they're letting Leon Flack be a bit more defensive and being a bit more covering well, and allowing Jose to push on, be a more contributing factor going forward. It's obviously exciting, and I think Jim sort of did mention it in the presser, didn't he, Jose, after the game? Like, he's been tempted to move Jose away from that 6 role just to see what he can do, and obviously seeing how well he has done in this more of an 8 role.
Yep.
Which Dave, I know you love it. I know you love every second of it.
It's just actually a bit more dynamic in midfield, as opposed to, I think Jim's also sort of said like how Ali Bedoya, he leads the team and the creating chances and offensive statistics that the team values, but it just makes you a bit more dynamic having a player that can go up and down the pitch, can get the ball and try and beat a man, and has a bit of something about him that you in a good way you don't know what he's going to do. And with Ali, he's gonna get the ball and he's just gonna take a heavy touch and try and get beyond his man, or he's gonna play a 1-2 with Dembizer, or he's gonna play a deep cross into the box, or put a cross into the box and deep, whatever. Like with Jose, you never know what you're gonna get, and that does keep opposition teams on their toes. You do see quite often, like some teams do take Ali Bedoya out the game a lot of the time. Like, they know what he's going to do. They'll either stick a midfielder on him or they'll try and pin him deep so he can't. So I think, it's an exciting perhaps change. I think when Ali is fit, I would be disappointed to see him come into this lineup, because I think what we've got at the moment in this 5-3-2 it's solid. I think it clearly, you have the fine line between being able to create chances, and we've seen the last few games, especially when we played this 5 at the back or the 3 at the back, we are creating chances. So, I mean, fingers crossed they can stick around with it. And if McGlynn comes in for Flack or whatever, like, just keep Jose in that more attacking role.
Well, that's the thing. So Derek mentions here, Martinez has opened another part of his game. He has more assists than Olivier and Wagner, which, to think that one of the best 6s in the league is opening another part of his game and expanding his game to make himself even more, valuable and more of an attacking presence, is kind of scary to think about if you're other MLS clubs. But I know, Jose, you had kind of hinted about the conversation that Curtin had with the players with the pressure and kind of creating pressure to come back into this game. That first goal. Let's talk about the first goal, because if you watch back on the replay, Michael Ua somewhat presses the keeper to force him into a turnover off his goal kick, and then it leads to the goal from Jack Elliott to Julian Carranza. So let me walk me through that first goal and what you saw from that, and the first and second goal too.
Well, from what I saw from the replays, having not watched it live,
right.
I saw some high press. I also saw some very Philadelphia Union goals, which is the way that Jim described it. Specifically, the second Carranza goal, where I think it was no more than 12 seconds. It went from Andre Blake to Carranza putting it in the back of the net. So I think we saw, hate to call it vintage because it was just last year, but we saw a 2022 Philadelphia Union, right? That was capitalizing on getting teams to turn over the ball or use their best assets in both Ua sprinting, being pure diesel down the line and pressing and just getting ahead, Gastak to then dish off the ball and just someone else, Carranza being the trident in the forwards to just finish it off. So I think we saw a 2022 Philadelphia Union, which we very much welcome, and to all, and you can check the tape from a few weeks ago, all that we're saying that the sky was falling because we fell out of 2 competitions very, very quickly. And in terms of a week and a half, not even, we are so in the Supporter Shield race. I mean, a few things need to fall correctly for Cincinnati and the West to sort of stay the same, but we're not far away. So
we're 9 points back, and we're only about 2 points back from the first place Western Conference team. So we're not at all far back.
Never mind LAFC having obviously a very important game this Wednesday. And whether you side with them or against them, I'm just very happy to see an MLS team again representing, at that continental level.
Well, so I just
Absolutely.
quickly jump in there with that AFC. It's quite an interesting one because they didn't play a game. I believe they didn't play a game this weekend,
Mm-mm.
and they're not playing a game this following weekend. So they're going to have, I think they're going to have like 4 or 5 games in hand on the rest of the teams in the West.
Wow.
Whichever way you look at it, I think by the end of that time, so I think Seattle Sounders right now have kind of got 3 games ahead of them. So I mean, another game whenever they play. In fact, the 2 games we've got coming up these next in midweek, and they're going to have a 5 games in hand. So I think clearly they are going to be this heavy favourites to support Shield again with the amount of games and with the quantity of games in hand they've got. But yeah, I think obviously for the Eastern Conference, I think it is wide open. I know, of course, as you sort of alluded to, Mike. Yes, Jose, sorry. Cincinnati have got that 9-point sort of cushion at the moment, but I think again, I feel like perhaps they don't, and perhaps Cincinnati continue this incredible run they're on, and fair play to them if they do. But surely at some point in this year, they're going to, fall upon a rough patch, which Union hopefully have already gone through. We don't have to go through, that concerning patch again. They
Well, they're actually on. They've already at this point of last year, they actually have more points and more goals than they did in 2022. Because talking about the rough patch, Dave. At this point last season, we were wondering where the wins were going to come from,
Yep.
where the goals going to come from, and we are not in that anymore. We know where the offense is going to come from. We've already been winning more than we have last year. Of course, the losses are a little bit more than we'd like, but I think we've also noticed the defense has improved as well. The goal differential is starting to kind of climb its way back to where we feel more comfortable with. But I think one person in particular, I know we've mentioned about Flock and how he's seemed more comfortable in that role next to
Mhm.
Jose. How about Jack Elliott? I think he's been playing better. I thought Jack Elliott's pass to Carranza was phenomenal.
Yep.
And that's what I think, Dave, I know we talked about this not last season, but the end of 2 seasons ago into last year. We said Jack Elliott's starting to get his offensive game kind of to the level we wanted from him. And we didn't really see much of that this year so far. Jack hasn't really had any sort of big offensive moments. That was one that I can remember, like, wow, that was the Elliott that I remembered from last year,
yeah.
and having that moment. And even Carranza, we've talked about him earlier this season saying, hey, his touch has been kind of off. He's still scoring, but sometimes he has these little miscues. But his touch on both of those goals was extraordinary. And then, of course, the second goal with Jose Martinez. Dave, I know, back to what your point was, having him be that offensive push, as you can see, he's not just facilitating from the 6 now and kind of running back. He was going full throttle for that goal, and the pass he put on and the dummy by Gaza to kind of give you with that ball was exactly what you want to see from this team right now. So I know upcoming next we have Charlotte on Wednesday and we have Montreal on Saturday. But before we even get to that point, we do end the game 3-1 against New York City. I know Gabby Pereira could have had 2 goals early on. Actually, it should have been 2-0 if it didn't hit the crossbar. So we really got some luck overall. But in terms of the result, I mean, any sort of negatives that you guys saw from this match, any sort of red flags you're kind of worried hopefully gets corrected by the time Wednesday comes around? Dave, I'll shoot to you first.
I think the main one was probably the gaps in between the wing backs and the centre backs, because that was probably the most concern. They got so much joy in behind, and again, that Pereira chance where he hit the crossbar was because there was a massive gap in between. Well, there was a massive gap from Kai Wagner being so high up the pitch and just allowed him just to move off and cut inside. And I think we saw it a couple of times, really, that sort of gap between the wing backs and perhaps the wing backs and the fullbacks, whether it's because the wing backs are pushed up so high and the Union being caught on the counter attack. And I think Jim always alludes to it when the team's not built to go from end to end, and it did get a bit like that at points in the first half, and that was part of NYCFC's game plan. But just a quick point on obviously, I don't think we haven't touched upon how good that first Carranza goal was. I don't think people really appreciate how good that was. With seeing a long ball like that, I mean, instinctively you're either going to try and bring it down with your feet, or you're going to your first touch is try and bring it down your feet, or get it to bring it down to your feet, so you've got it under control. To have the awareness to notice that you've got a player, you've got space inside, and there's space if you get it right to be able to shoot first time. to have been able to have chested that ball down into the
Yeah.
space, to take the ball away from the two defenders, and then to finish like he did was just incredible. And even the second goal, again, sort of all three forwards. Again, I've been mentioning it the last few weeks. All three forwards are contributing. Mikadua for the
Exactly.
assist with the assist. Him and Gazdag, the awareness for Uwa to call for the ball. Gazdag to make the overlapping run to draw out one defender, which allows Uwa to make a run inside with the space that he has. And then, it then obviously open up the space to be able to bring on the ball to Kranz, who was in acres of room to just absolutely drill the ball into the bottom corner. I think those were two really well worked goals. And we sort of saw those patterns of play in the second half as well, with the passing and it was good to see everything starting to link together now. And I guess we were perhaps doom and gloom the first during the CCL run, but I think that's perhaps the annoying thing is I know we sit here and people said, "Oh, the CCL takes a toll on you," really, but just think like how was it really that difficult to really kickstart things? You know what I mean? Like where was this in the first few weeks of the season where no disrespect? I mean, yes, they were having to do long journeys sometimes, but like, why is it taking this long to have unlocked this out the locker? And realistically,
I think, Dave, I'll answer that and I'll also post a couple of comments. And Jose, I'm actually curious. I know you want to mention something about Jose Martinez's contract as well. So first, Valerie mentions the Riverhounds maybe possibly contributing to the rough patch for Cincinnati, of course. And then
Hopefully.
Derek with a little question here, which Jose, I'll shoot to you for your little moment here. So what do you think of Lowe being the center back because of how opponents might exploit the spacing between the center backs? Clearly, Lowe is the fastest of the three. Also, we noticed some vocal leadership from Lowe as well. I think after the game, Martinez had some sort of issue, and Lowe kind of pulled him back and had a conversation with him to talk to his teammates instead of just walking off. So I feel like Lowe has been also a vocal presence, not just a physical presence. But Jose, I know you have a few things to talk about, but also your thoughts on Lowe.
Yeah, I think Alo has been obviously the revelation this year, right? I think we were all very excited about his addition, but I don't think we ever imagined that he would be as integral to the team as he has been over the
Yeah.
last few weeks, if not months, right? We think about those CCL performances that he was putting up, never mind the chances that he got, which were few and far between during the league. And I think it's very hard now for Jim to decide to drop him, considering the form that he's in. If anything, I would think Ellie would be first one out to keep Glasness and his streak going. And then if he's willing to shift the formation again, which I think from what we've seen these last couple of games, why mess with it? Just keep this this 3-5, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's great. Keep it. But I think Lowe is listen, he's had his mental lapses, right? We go back to that goal. I forget who was it against.
Colorado.
Yeah, where he stepped when he did his stepping, but he stepped a little too hard when the player was already facing away from his net, and it would have taken an incredible turn, let alone a dummy through both the player's legs and Damien's legs to get to the person all the way far corner. And obviously, we know Blake can typically deal with something like that. So I think Damien's just been an incredible addition, but on Martinez's contract, let's not forget he has been probably so anxious about this and probably so involved in this in a way, maybe in his mind. Listen, he's only guaranteed, and I have pulled up the data from the MLSPA. He is a bargain, only making $301,000 this year in guaranteed compensation. That is
Wow.
less than Joaquin Torres is making this year.
Yeah.
And let's not forget who is playing a hell of a lot more and who has had a hell of a lot more experience, never mind accolades over the last couple of years, not just from the press, but also with actual silverware won with both the Shield and the Eastern Conference final. Never mind going into an MLS final that was, super exciting. Unfortunately, wrong result. But just really interesting situation we find ourselves in, right? A lot of really, really good play right now, and it's just really hard to see how we welcome Charlotte midweek after they have to make a cross country trip to us.
Yes. No, I agree. And also, I just want to touch upon what Dave mentioned with the forwards. Michael Ua is likely not scoring as much as we'd all would like, but he has begun to be more involved in the game. And I think these assists are just as important as his goals because if he's getting an assist every other match, I will take that every single day because at the end of the day, his job is to help produce goals, whether it's scoring or assisting. It doesn't. I don't really care how it's getting done. And I feel like Michael's been more comfortable lately out in the top. He seems like he's just more involved from beginning to end. But um, for Jose Martinez, his extension also makes all of us feel a whole of a lot better if Kai Wagner does end up leaving down the road, because at least you have one of those pieces remaining for the next X amount of years. Because how all of us were afraid that we would lose both of them entering this season, right? And now suddenly we have some security and some reassurance that Jose will at least be sticking around for some time. But listen, Jose, I agree with you. I think that this was likely on his mind, and maybe now, and then he also just had a son too. I'm sure that was another thing. So just think about it from a human being perspective. You have a son on the way. Your contract is not a certainty. All that stuff going into it, and Dave, I'm going to answer your question as well regarding the formation. I do think that Jim entered the season saying we're going to run it back with everything, the formation and the players. And I think it took getting embarrassed by LAFC to say, you know what, I have to change. I mean, that's what and you mentioned at the press conference, Dave, how open he was about a sense of, you know, changing the formation, using your depth in a different way. And since he's had that press conference, we have noticed a difference in the use of depth and a difference in the use of formation. But now the question is, with these two upcoming matches, Ali Bedoya only has a grade 1 quad strain. You know, Jack McGlynn is only gone for a short amount of time, but I don't know how you can possibly get away with this from this formation and lineup. I don't see how. I mean, Dave, what's the justification that Ali is the captain? I mean, or do you go with
I
what's
don't.
working right now? Because it's an honest question. You know.
I think you've got to just go with based off performance. I think that's perhaps, something that Jim has. Considering how consistent this team's been in MLS play over the last couple of years, especially, I think Jim's got away with the excuse of no, you pick players based on form. But
Yeah.
just really, looking like at that team, I think again, obviously with I think Derek's comment as well about or point as well that how Martinez has more assists than both Bizo or Wagner. I think that's been such a massive, perhaps, reason for why this team struggled at the first. Well, I wouldn't say we're halfway through a season yet, but the first 8 games, 9 games, because the two fullbacks, they are the creative outlets.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? The team relies so much upon the right back and left back to create and to get assists and put like crosses into the box that do test your opponent. And both fullbacks, or all the fullbacks that have played this season, have failed to produce. And
Mm-hmm.
I think when you actually open up a player that, no disrespect to Ali, I think again he hasn't. I know Jim makes the point of he creates loads in terms of team statistics, but watching the game on the field, he's not been nearly as good as he was in attack last season.
Yeah.
And you just having players that actually have again a bit more dynamic. I think that's such a big thing, and hopefully, that's obviously with Jose's new deal, and I presume he's going to be making more money. You'll want to see him producing more than he's already. If you're going to give him more money, so I'd like to think that the natural progression for him is to move from that 6 role to that 8. Especially maybe he started a bit slowly in the 6, but I think is a more defensive player this year. But Leon Flack started to grow into that role. I think again he had a solid game. He had a solid game against NYCFC. Wasn't exactly heavily involved, but he just did the dirty work. He stuck. He got the ball, kept it simple. We saw it a few times. He'd kick the ball, play a 5-yard pass, and move on with it. And I think again maybe that is the combination that works. When Jack McGlynn comes in, that's a good decision to have. It's a good situation to be in when you're a bit stuck on who to play because you've got good enough players that can come in. And I said it, I think it been last week or the week before. I really want to see Jack McGlynn playing in that holding role where he is just constructing, he's just orchestrating the play and just picking up passes, going up to the wing backs, keeping it simple. Do you know what I mean? I would like to try and see perhaps the Union try and play through Jack McGlynn, even if they are with the back 5 when he comes back. Having Martinez playing that more advanced role,
Kind of like Harris Madunian in a way.
yeah.
Back from a couple years ago. I mean, Jose, what do you? Because to think that you want to do the Nathan Harriel treatment to Jack McGlynn or even Bedoya sounds kind of silly, because that's what we do with Nathan. Like if it's a game against the Red Bulls, he's almost always going to start, right? It's like you kind of use him based off the team you're playing. Is that how we're going to use these extra players moving forward? Well, we're playing against Charlotte. Let's throw in Bedoya, for example. So, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'd be intrigued to see what Jim decides, right? I personally think I would go with what's working and not mess with it, right? This formation, which is officially different and finally different from what we saw so much of last year. after being figured out per se, and that question that kept on coming up, right?
It was a fair. We did get figured out. Let's just call it what it is, right?
Yeah, I'm just glad that now that there's a little bit of a different look to the team, right? So, on Bedoya, guys, I've been sounding this horn from the beginning of this year and certainly last year as I was sort of coming in from time to time. But how does this team move away from him, right? What does that transition look like? And I think we're going into a crash course of it right now. Whether it's, as Derek mentions through Facebook, thank you for watching, Derek. And again, as Dave mentioned, great stuff that you're posting and asking questions about.
Yeah.
I don't know what his role is after this year, and if or really mid-season. I think he is very much the emotional captain of this team, but
Sure.
what will he be doing on the field when you have the players of the caliber of Jack McGlynn who are pushing for playing time, especially doing so well in the under-20 tournament out in Argentina right now, and Leon Flock, who's finally figured out how to play a 6 with assistance right now, baby steps. So I don't know where he fits in outside of being first sub in, or most definitely having to be first sub out at the 60th minute.
So, and for those who are listening to this later on, Derek suggests the super sub of Bedoya coming in, and I think the Jose Martinez growth and Leon's growth at the same time is something you just cannot mess around with right now. I think that if you bring Bedoya in off the bench, he does have that leadership. He does have that stability. You can get a lot out of him in 30, 25 minutes. And with him being the last year of his contract, I mean, maybe that's how he gets a new contract with another team next year, showing his value off the bench and what he can do. But at the same time, Bedoya still is a, professional athlete. They want to play every single minute, but he's also the leader of this team. So does he put his pride away and pride down and say, hey, listen, I'm going to do what is best for this club. And right now, at this point, what's best for the club is for him to be a super sub and let Leon continue to grow in this role, or being okay with only playing 60 minutes and having Leon get in there as a sub, whatever that might be, or the same thing with Jack McGlynn. Because Dave, I agree with you too. I think it'd be really good to see him playing out the back like that. Go ahead, Jose.
Yeah, I think it goes without saying, and to full transparency, I think to anybody listening, whether it's your first time or 20th time listening to us this year or into last year, but we're super appreciative for what Alec has done for this team over the years. Never mind for the community, and certainly being an incredible ambassador for the city of Philadelphia during the bid for the World Cup. So super involved with the community, super involved with the fans, obviously an advocate for a lot of different things, gun control being one of them and whatnot. Where you stand on that, it's a different story, but nonetheless be very vocal about what he wants to see out of this city and never mind this country. It's been appreciated, but sometimes it's just, time to move on. And I think that's where we find ourselves right now as we continue to think about the Philadelphia Union 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. Maybe Ale moving on is the next stage of what this team looks like in the future, especially with someone as of his caliber and what he's done for this team. I mean, just putting it out there, something to think about.
Yeah. I think I agree. I think the point, I think you said moving on. I think clearly, no disrespect to Ali, age is catching up to him this year. I mean, even the back end of last year, I don't think he missed a game or two to injury over the previous 3 seasons up to the back end of last year. He was pretty much the consistent figure in the team alongside Andre Blake and Jacob Glasnes. But he got a bad injury at the back end of the last year in the playoffs. Missed the MLS Cup final because of it. This season, I think he's already had 2 injuries that kept him. He's already had 2 injuries or 2 knocks this year. Clearly, age is catching up to him, and it's obviously. No disrespect to Ali, I think you see his performances. I think the LAFC game where he was blown out of his arse after about 30 minutes. Things clearly he can't play in the same role that he has been accustomed to, which is a box-to-box midfielder, bombing up and down the pitch and working hard, making sure he gets back defensively. And I think Jim alluded to it, he plays a bit more defensive this year. He's more of a defensive right-sided player. But when you rely so heavily on your fullbacks, and you don't really have many players in your team that can carry the ball in your midfield, when you've got basically 2 players that are dedicated to just sitting and holding, do we then lose more going forward, which perhaps was another issue which we saw this year. And no disrespect to Ali, I think the perfect role for him would be to come on with the Union winning 1-0, 2-1 with 15, 20 minutes to go and come and help short the result. I mean, you look at some of the midfielders in the team, I'd rather see Andres Prayer get some minutes. I'd rather
Yeah,
see. I'd
even
rather see,
Bueno. I mean,
Bueno,
just
yeah.
yeah,
See
and
what
that,
you've got. See
and
what you've
that's
got.
and that's a conversation. And see, that's where Jim Curtin's leadership will be put to the test, because ultimately that's a conversation that he will have to have with Ali. Say, listen, we need to have a conversation with what is best for this club right now. And right now, the Philadelphia Union have gone 7 unbeaten in MLS. They just beat the shit out of NYCFC. We saw them play well against the Revolution. Even though the Revs were down health wise, I get that. But they still had a very strong performance. I mean, it's a conversation that has to be had with him. And now how Ali responds to that, I don't think he would have an unprofessional response to it. I think ultimately he is a true professional, and he always has been. But it's gonna be it's gonna be quite an interesting scene once he is fully healthy, how often he's being played, and
Yeah.
or if Flock takes the brunt of it because of he is the captain after all.
Yeah.
But going on to Charlotte, let's talk about Charlotte real quick.
Sorry,
So
mate. Just quickly, to add on to that, I
yeah,
think that's
go
going to
ahead,
be the
go ahead.
biggest point in the season, seeing how Jim reacts to that, because he's seen not just the way that, of course, we're on a 7-game unbeaten run, and Ali played a few games in that, but you've just seen a difference in the way this team has played in terms of its attacking style, how solid it has been defensively as well. And if Jim's willing to risk the fluidity and the balance just to get Ali Bedoya back in this team, that's going to be and if this team starts to drop off in its levels of performance, intensity, it's clear where that's gone. And if Jim doesn't realise that soon, or if he, I think again, Ali Bedoya's been, as you've mentioned, he's been a fantastic servant to the team, a fantastic servant to the city. And personally, I would like to see Ali perhaps have a role in the Union Academy or part of the Union coaching team when he retires.
Yeah,
Obviously,
of
if you
course.
Ted Lasso watches, perhaps be a bit of a Roy Kent. Go straight into the coaching setup or work with the, work with that work with the academy and things such as that. And again, he'll be easily in the Ring of Honor the year he retires. But I feel
course.
like you need, at this point in the year, you need fresher legs. You need players that are going to be able to contribute from minute 1 to minute 90. So, yeah, I think
Dog's gonna go bananas.
Yeah, Dave, I'll jump in with that too. So looking at Charlotte now and seeing what's up ahead for the Union. So Charlotte has played a lot of soccer lately. They played on May 9th. They had a 1-0 win against Orlando in the round of 32. They have beaten Atlanta. They have beaten Chicago. They lost 2-1 in Nashville. They lost to Birmingham in the round of 16, and then they just beat LA Galaxy 1-0 on Wednesday. So it's been a bit of travel. I'm sorry, on Saturday. It's been a bit of travel. It's been a decent form though overall from top to bottom. And they also had beat NYCFC back on May 6th. So they've racked up the wins. For those who aren't following Charlotte as closely as we are, they are currently in 6th place. They have 15 games, so they've played one more game than we have, and they are at 21 points. So really, this is a match that Charlotte wants to keep their form in. I just don't know how alert they'll be, or ready they'll be, I should say, after that transition from the West Coast. So Jose, if your thoughts on what we should expect from Charlotte, because there is a bit of a revenge factor in here. If you guys remember the Charlotte match from last year where we got embarrassed at the end of that season,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Jose, how much of that you think gets involved here?
I don't know if it's locker room signage that gets posted up or anything, but it's certainly something to remember. Obviously, we beat them at home and then we got embarrassed out in Charlotte. So
Yeah.
I think it'll be fun. I think we'll see Derek Jones come back home. Maybe get some playing time. I know he actually did watch some of the LA Galaxy game against Charlotte, just some highlights, and saw him play fairly well. So I think that we will come on top. We have a nice streak going. We have things that are working, unless we decide to not let those things work, and we try to inject players that maybe, again, to our last conversation, that maybe are not part of the plans right now in the way of that things are working. So a bit of a revenge game, sure, but this, I think this is a game that, again, we think about win at home, tie away. So let's just figure it out.
Dave, I mean, do you worry? For me, I worry about the DC game and how that might be the same thing we see against Charlotte. Go ahead.
I think the interesting thing with that DC game is the fact that Jim reverted back to the 4-4-2 diamond and perhaps changed the winning lineup a bit. But an interesting stat about Charlotte coming to this game is the fact that after this weekend they won. I believe they won back to back road matches for the first time in their history
Yep.
in the MLS play. So yes, that's something I think that you probably will have to look out for.
Hmm.
You know, would you exactly, it could be a bit of a trap game as well.
Trap
But I
game.
think coming off the back of back-to-back road wins for the first time in history, perhaps they might be feeling themselves a bit more lively. I think it's gonna be. I think it will be a tough game. I think they've obviously had a bit of a rough start to the year. They've come on in recent weeks. Um, but again, I think as you said, that road game last year, which when you look at it, it cost. That was the difference between the Supporter Shield and hosting the MLS Cup final.
That's true.
So yeah, perhaps there might be a little bit in the back of their heads, Jim might, put on the, something just to put in the back of the heads of, the performance was so bad last year against this lot. We might want to, go out and get revenge. So fingers crossed, they don't let up because I think that might perhaps have been something that might have hurt them last year is the fact that going into Charlotte and the disrespect where the two teams were, perhaps the Union might have underestimated them a bit and, fell short. So, I mean, I'm hoping that, that's not the case this year.
And I think so. Derek posted, he said, "Do you think this is a trap game for us? We played 3 adrenaline-packed games against DC United and New England and NYCFC." And I do kind of get that because it has been a lot of high adrenaline soccer. But um, I last year we played Charlotte, and I know we talk about the Red Bull game and how I know Jose, that's your go-to thing. If we had just beaten Red Bull at home, we would have gotten the shield all that stuff. But
With the
that
man up.
Charlotte, yeah, that Charlotte game really was a letdown. Even if we
Hmm.
drew at that game, we would have had a better advantage of getting that. And I do think they need to remember that in some regard. But looking at the head to head, let's focus on the game itself. We have total goals. Philadelphia has 23, Charlotte has 20, while goals against the Philadelphia Union have only given up 15, while Charlotte has given up 25. So they have given up a -5 goal differential so far. So they give up goals aplenty. If you look at all their games, the last shutout, they had a shutout obviously on Saturday, as I say that out loud, but otherwise they give up goals fairly, frequently. Um, I would like to see that continue, obviously at home in against Philly. Now the lineup here. Do you think, Jose, that we go with the lineup that happened in New York City, or do you think we see somebody else pop in, or change of formation possibly?
I think they stick to it. I don't think I would personally change a thing. What has worked and worked so well, despite the field and its condition, that being the measurements of it in New York City. Why mess with it, right? It's worked at home and away. Just play another game. And to Derek's point a little bit earlier, I don't think that I would use the word adrenaline in any way, shape, or form for that DC United game that we had to slug through last week. So just a tiny little correction and an opinion really, but lineup wise, I don't see it changing. But then again, we can never predict Jim.
And honestly, I think if you're looking at the 2 games we have this week between Charlotte and Montreal, don't you feel like Montreal is more of the trap game, really, when you think about it? Because at least Charlotte's coming in here. They're coming in here with decent form lately. They have that revenge factor. We've mentioned that about 2 or 3 times now. But Montreal is really not. I mean, not the team that they were last year at all. And we had talked about that stat where we had been the team that had given up goals against Montreal compared to anybody else in the league so far this year. So, Dave, what are your thoughts on that Montreal game, kind of coupled off the back of this Charlotte match?
Yeah, I think with 2 games this weekend, both at home, I think perhaps you could get away with rotating a bit, giving other players a chance. But I mean, just looking at that, Jose called it a slog of a DC United game. That midfield three, it was so uninspiring. But
Yeah,
Doyer, Leon Flack,
Matt
Matt
Real.
Real, that's such an uninspiring midfield three. And I guess looking back at it now, we know why we didn't, muster really any chances of actually, create anything. Didn't really have anything. But I think I would be interested, perhaps stick with the same formation, or I mean, even if Jim does revert back to the diamond for one of the games, I would like, if he was to go back to the diamond, I would like to perhaps, see a, the Pereira, Bueno both start, and do you know what I mean? It'd be nice to perhaps see other players maybe start a game, maybe, if Jim wants to keep legs fresh, when things are starting to heat up now, uh, you know, you've got a couple of big trips coming up, to San Jose and
Yeah.
Orlando City, so they're going to be difficult games, especially with the humid conditions. So, I mean, it'd be interesting to see if Jim, looks at it and feels, let's keep things going, rotate get some fresh legs in, and a Pereira should be itching, chomping at the bit to get involved. As should Torres, as should Bueno. Really, I think Bueno's become a bit more of a fixture in recent weeks in terms of substitute appearances, getting minutes, whereas Pereira again and Torres both weren't involved at the weekend. So I think these are players that perhaps you'd like to see get minutes in games where you'd like to think even if the Union were to change 2 or 3 players in the team, they should still come out on top. So
And
I think it's a good opportunity.
I think we've seen, honestly, unfortunately, the last of Torres too, with Bedoya being healthy and Quinn Sullivan coming back within the near future. I think Torres is probably going to be cut off the list. But then, at the same time, when is Pereira ever going to get his mid stuff? Which we've talked about already, multiple times at this point.
Defensive growth is needed.
Yeah, no, I hear you there, and I do think that if Jim is gonna rest anybody or kind of do a weaker formation, I do think he's gonna choose Montreal to be that match. Then of course that kind of goes back to the trap game thing. Like, are we gonna pull off a great 3-1 victory against Charlotte, have a great performance, and then kind of have a clunker on Saturday because we're essentially resting a bit, load management before we head out to San Jose. So again, I know we usually do the bet the boys in blue. I don't think we really can until we figure out what the Wednesday lineup is and then kind of have our predictions for Saturday. But I mean, that so far is, I think, our reviews and expectation for this game and what we've seen from NYCFC. I'm going to go through the sponsor rates, and I guess we'll close up the show, guys. Or do you have any other last thoughts before of Charlotte and Montreal, fellas?
4-point minimum, right? That's what we're expecting out of this, right?
Yeah.
Okay, is that what our goals is here? 4 points again,
Yeah.
like we were last week?
It has to be, Mike. I mean, 2 home games back to back against the mid-table to bottom of the table teams. Anything less than 4 points, I think, is a failure, especially at home.
I think you're looking at teams that perhaps don't score as many goals as the teams around them. You look at Charlotte with the -5 goal difference; they conceded 25 goals this year already, which was a lot of goals. You look at Montreal; they struggled to score goals as well. So I think those are 2 games that I know. Yes, the Union lost in Montreal in the season; they weren't very good. But this is the sort of game. Again, perhaps it might be a bit of a revenge game as well. I mean, the Union, no disrespect for that start of the season, that wasn't a really embarrassing defeat for the Union. Really embarrassing. So I think that might perhaps light a fire up in the in their bellies and the stomach to try and kick on against Montreal. And maybe Jim might not look at it that way, but I think the players certainly should, especially with how they've kicked on in recent weeks.
They should. You know what's funny? I was just looking at the standings. I really haven't been able to keep track of it as much as I'd like. So when we lost to Miami, they had 6 points to start the year. They're undefeated. They have 15 points this year. They've only had 9 points earned since we lost to them in Miami.
That team has suffered a lot in injuries.
It's unbelievable. I know they have. I know the whole Neville out thing is a real thing right now in Miami. I know Alex Winley, or one of our friends who came and joined us, has been kind of. But I really thought Miami was going to be better. And I know that there's other circumstances, but to see that they only had 15 points after they had 6 points in week 2 is pretty crazy. And then Derek says, thanks, guys, for dedication, especially Dave across the pond. I want 6. And listen, Derek, I think 6 points is the expectations. I agree with these guys. Realistically speaking, will we be happy with 4 points? Of course we will, as long as we keep the unbeaten streak going. I think that's what we have to keep going. Just don't lose. As long as you tie and you draw, don't lose.
Try and keep pace with Cincinnati.
Exactly.
Yeah. One final thing, as we approach July and, a lot of the big leagues are half finished this past weekend or are finishing up this coming weekend. Jin keeps on saying it. And just to keep an eye on, obviously, Kai, we've known he's been a target in the past and maybe we haven't received bids that were acceptable for what we thought he was worth. But Jim has also been very open, and Dave, I think you were in the presser this past week or listening to it or following along, but let's not forget he is also picking up a lot of calls or a lot of interest about Julian Carranza, which would leave us very, very, very thin at the striker position.
Chris Donovan, baby.
If he were to leave and Chris Donovan's next man up, I think we may have a little bit of an issue. No offense to Chris and his game, but Donovan cannot be your answer if Julian Carranza leaves for double-digit million or maybe single-digit million. I don't know.
It would have to be, and Moyo says hi. Hey, man, appreciate it. I think it was his birthday last week. If it was, happy belated birthday. listen, Quinn. That's what the Quinn Sullivan show happens, Jose. I really do.
Yeah,
It would have to be a seamless transition of that same type of pressing, high octane, energy for 90 minutes from Quinn Sullivan. But let's get to the sponsor reads, and then we'll, wrap up the show. Check out Statement Games at statementgames.com for a fun new way to fancy sports and entertainment. You can win gift cards or prizes. It's free to sign up at statementgames.com. Doan Distillery at the Trolley Barn Public Market in Quakertown. Go to doandistillery.com to check out their wide variety of drinks and spirits. Vinny's Pizza and Restaurant in Allentown, PA. Discover a new favorite by trying their top pizzas and so much more. Check out their new website at vinnyspizzarestaurant.com. Stuffed to the Grills at 6750 Iroquois Trail number 5 in Allentown, PA. Or stuffedtothegrills.com. They have homemade hot and cold sandwiches, salads, appetizers, and baked goods available for any event. If you're running late on Wednesday night, you can't cook any dinner, stuffedtothegrills.com. Get some pickup, and then go watch the Union take care of Charlotte. We have the Across the Pitch gear and AAT Sports Network gear at aatsportsnetwork.com/shop. And lastly, we've been doing some promotions for Margot Reed, MargotReedStudio.com or Margot Reed Studio on IG. She helped us photograph the DC United match. What feels like a long time ago, but it was only about last week. So again, that is our sponsor read here. And guys, final thoughts. Jose, I'll go to you first.
Really excited to have the Union back home, 2 games back to back, and then we have a break from home games until June 20 something, I think. So,
yep,
really, really excited to get back to Subaru Park. I hope to see you there, Mike, this Wednesday. I'm not sure if you're coming or not.
I will not be there Wednesday. I may be Saturday, maybe.
Gotcha. But again, thank you everybody for listening, commenting, and we really appreciate you sharing your Monday evening with us. And happy Memorial Day.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Dave, how about you? The final thought.
Yeah, I think obviously it could be a big week. Obviously, 2 games, which is it's not been a regular occurrence the last few weeks, especially. But I think again, biggest thing. Hopefully, the Union can come out with it with 6 points, even just 4. Keep in touch with Cincinnati, who've got a tough game against NYCFC tomorrow night. So again, it's going to be a big week. Not season defining, but I think it will go a long way and perhaps giving us a good idea of how competitive this season will go. If things sort of fizzle out and the team settles like a 4th or 3rd place finish, or we're competing for that Eastern Conference start, or first place in Eastern Conference right till the very end. Again, obviously, great to be back on the show. Good to be discussing some Union with you guys, and obviously, Mike, I believe you'll be covering the game Wednesday night. Sorry.
I will be on the match Wednesday night. I'll be covering it, not from the stadium, from home. Valerie says goodnight, Milo. My cat's actually sleeping right behind my computer. It was very active tonight on my screen. So I don't know. I was gone most of the weekend. I think he just misses me.
Yeah.
So my final thought here, guys, and to Jose's point, we have a very tough schedule ahead. And I don't think people really realize it right now. So that's where the 6 points in this week is very important. We travel to San Jose. We travel to Orlando. Then we host Miami, but then in July we go to Atlanta, go to LA Galaxy, go to Nashville, host NYCFC, and then we have the group stage of the Leagues Cup. So those are some very tough road matches. It reminds me of last year's very tough road match schedule in May. So my final thought is the Union need to get 4 to 6 points this week and just continue that flow. And if they can do that and enter Leagues Cup with a really, really good streak going, even with maybe just one loss. Oh my goodness, man, this city's gonna be crazy for the Union. And they're very right. They're very much in that spot for second place, which I will also gladly take. I think all of us entering the season said, considering the schedule, second place is perfectly fine with me. So again, that is Across the Pitch from Memorial Day special here. Appreciate you guys chiming in. All of our handles are below on the screen. Dave GFC Miller, Jose R Nunez 91. And Barrera1323 on TikTok and Twitter. And that's it. Good night, guys.
Go Union.
Brian East, happy Memorial Day. Thank you for your service.
There you go. Thanks, guys.